Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first SWAAAC web conference. Can everybody hear me okay? So these SWAAC web conferences, I see some new names that I haven't seen before, so I'm just going to take a quick moment. They're really intended to kind of bring to the table current hot topic issues and create a platform where we can just kind of chat and share our ideas, talk about what's working or not working, and do a little problem solving, networking, and benefiting from the collective knowledge, so to speak. The first topic seemed to be a hot topic last year. It came up repeatedly at the ed camps and at the team coordinators meeting around assessment and assistive technology. It feels like
someone has their mic on.
Is changing a little bit. In the past, I think our multidisciplinary team have done very direct hands-on assessments with students and written beautiful, long, elaborate reports. As our resources kind of get pulled back a little bit, we've had to rethink how we're delivering services. But I just want to kind of put it out there to everyone. Does somebody want to maybe talk a little bit about how you're delivering assessments? Anyone want to jump in there and talk a little bit about how your team is delivering assessment services? Feel free to go ahead and unmic. So I think I see Cherry Creek on. Are you all still largely doing in-person, hands-on assessments?
Hi, this is Lene from Cherry Creek. I'm an SLP on our team, and we are doing multidisciplinary assessments one time a week. We see typically we see one AAC kiddo in the morning and then a reading and writing kiddo. And then we see an AAC kiddo in the afternoon as well as a reading and writing kiddo. So our team breaks up into two teams to evaluate two different kiddos, both in the morning and the afternoon. And then we collaborate both before and in the middle of the day to discuss kiddos and discuss kind of what we're looking for. And then one person becomes a AT contact person.
Okay. So in order to kind of hold on to that multidisciplinary approach, you're splitting, but then still coming back together to talk about what everyone saw in order to bring in those skill sets, even if they weren't present in the room?
A lot of our collaboration happens actually before we go out on the evals. So from the paperwork, from the IEP, and then from any sort of outside assessments or recommendation, we come together beforehand, and that's actually how it's decided who goes out on which eval. So if it's a physically impacted kiddo, we typically grab one of our OTs. If it's more of a academic SPED concern, we grab our ILC SPED specialist. So it just kind of depends on what the need is.
Nice. And now are you still writing up a nice comprehensive report that becomes part of that student's file, permanent records?
We are. We've changed our process a little bit last year, so this is our second year. Instead of turning out a report in like a week or two, we are using our follow-up meetings and our diagnostic trials to input information into the reports. And so we're doing we write one final report with recommendations at the 6-week mark after we've actually had some time to trial different apps or computer software platforms and different things like that.
Great, great. And so do you feel like you're producing a higher quality product?
I think so. I think it feels a lot better making recommendations after trialing some things versus making a recommendation before we've even had really a good go at what apps we're looking at or what size of a screen we're looking at or access method, etc.
Super. So one other question for you. How are you, or are you at all, working within a process that pulls in the local IEP team?
So actually all of our communication is done alongside of the contact person appointed by the school team. So I kind of like to refer to it as the triangle effect. The student is the focal point, and then in order for us, school team, IEP team, AT team, and then parent, that's kind of a three-way triangle. And so all communication goes through all three of us, versus like the AT team, we do work directly with kiddos, but we don't without having a school IEP team member present.
Great, great. So before I completely let you off the hook, do you want to talk maybe a little bit about what kind of drove you to make some of those changes to your process and what's working and what struggles you might still be working through?
I think a lot of it's just been trial and error. A lot of it's been feedback. I think one of the beasts I'm sure everybody faces is just turnaround time and not having enough time in the day to see as many people as you want to see. So I think we're always trying to figure out how to keep the integrity of our multidisciplinary process without the wait time being an exorbitant amount of wait time. So I think if anyone has any suggestions on that, we would be we'd gladly hear any other suggestions. I think it was 2 years ago or last year, we were doing 6 evals a day, and the amount of kiddos that were getting picked up onto our AT caseload, it was so hard. Yeah, we got in kids sooner, but then our follow-up times were pushed out because we were already so booked trying to follow up with other kiddos. So I think the nature of every beast is time. How are people managing their time? Because I think that's what we struggle with.
Right. Yeah. It so often comes down to that. It's such a valuable resource. I know that Douglas County is Douglas County on? I'm not sure. I don't especially see them, but Julie, you're Douglas County, right?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I know that this has been a big topic for you all. You've made some drastic changes to your process in the last couple of years, and in fact, the team presented a little bit on some of the changes that you've been making at the symposium. Do you want to talk a little bit about your process?
As best I can. We consider ourselves more consultants. We're trying to empower the team to be part of that process of what's the deciding strategies and communication direction. So it's more of a consulting model. Being said that, it kind of helps us to scale back on how much we write for our reports. We're pretty much just being kind of basic in that regard. And we also have the tier system where we have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. tier 1 being more like a co-writer recommendation where we would need, anything formal set in place, just training of that software and getting them set up with that. Tier 2 would be like a low-tech type of a Big Mac or, PEX book or something like that, and trading in that. And then tier 3 would be more the communication app and an actual iPad that we're lending out for them to trial.
So the complexity of the students' AT needs is really dictating in some respect.
Yes.
Hands-on time you're dedicating to the process.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then I think too, it just depends on the team in terms of their comfort level, of course, utilizing the materials that we recommend. And so then we do offer a lot of training, but more like, this is a link, take a look at that. The core words that's on the PRC or the AAC autism site now. There's a 93-page document there with the core words, so showing them that and giving them suggestions of how to utilize that in the classroom. Yeah,
nice. I'm sometimes privy to people's discussions around how they're changing things, and I just so enjoyed listening to Sarah at the advisory committee meetings talking about some of the changes that you all are making. It just strikes me as being very well thought out and efficient in terms of taking care of this incredibly large school district.
Right.
You have to meet
I think we've gotten almost 40 new referrals since August, beginning of August.
Wow.
Yes. And that's not tier 1.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. And so do you have dedicated days also that you devote just to assessment?
No, well, it's we have an assistant who goes out and he does an observation.
Okay.
So she'll give us a heads up on like what they're looking at, what the child's like. And it's again a consultation assessment would be as like a beginning observation that we would have in place. We probably have an idea of what we're going to offer or what we're going to at least trial from our assistant who's given us that information. Or conversations back and forth too with the team, like via email. Are you thinking PECs? Are you thinking a device? So we have some idea of what to start.
So your assistant, is she pretty well trained or versed? Have you been training that person to kind of do those observations and that preliminary kind of triage?
Yes. She's gone out with Sarah and Aaron Dell pretty often, and they've been working together with her, and then she's just like taking observations and asking pertinent questions.
Great. And is that a paraprofessional? Or?
It is.
Wow.
Yeah. She was a EA in a SSN classroom.
Wow.
Before she came to us.
Great. I like that idea too.
Yeah.
Because a fairly well-trained paraprofessional could certainly be taking in all of that preliminary information that really helps to guide the level of intensity then that the team is going to provide for an assessment.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. I like that.
And she also helps us with our co-writer setup.
Nice.
So she'll go and help teams. Yeah.
So I see Adams 12 is on. You've got a paraprofessional that you're taking advantage of as well, right? Oh, sorry. Unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Yeah, we actually do. We have 2 paraprofessionals that work with our team. And they also both came out of significant support classrooms. And they are a wonderful resource for us.
Are you able to incorporate them a little bit into your assessment process?
I would say yes I think for the piece of going out and doing some observations and taking notes. They also do a lot of training on touch chat around a lot of the AAC that we do. and just general getting things done. They're really amazing. We're very lucky to have the two that we have.
Great.
Very highly skilled.
So do you feel comfortable talking a little bit about your assessment process?
I do, and I can only talk about the educational side of it because, our district, Maureen, my teammate, does all of the AAC, and I only do the academic side of it. And I think we're very similar to Douglas in the way we don't have an official tier system, but we really depend on the teams to start making those decisions. So if a student is very complex, then we will definitely go into a more formal evaluation, but often it's just working with the team and trialing and determining where they need to start with the student.
Great. Nice. Anybody else want to chime in and talk a little bit about what you're doing in your district?
Chris, there is a chat question up there.
Your turnaround time with getting referrals. Oh, okay. So yeah, that's a great question. I know that can be, personally, I know that can be a very long time period because I see kids sometimes come through the ATP clinic for services because they're waiting so long to try and get services through the schools. Does anybody want to talk a little bit about that? What your turnaround times are looking like between an initial referral and when you actually get out there to start a process of assessment?
I think for us in Adams 12, it's generally pretty quick because, again, we don't do a lot of really formal evaluations. So if a formal evaluation comes across, we know that it's something that we really need to address because the school team is stuck. They really need some support from our team. So I feel like we're able to get out there within a week or two. Absolutely. And again, we don't have a lot of forms that people have to fill out. We really want them to be comfortable. We do have an online form that they do the initial contact with us, but we really try to make it a comfortable situation so that they will come to us for the support.
Nice. Thanks. Anybody else want to share? It's probably a scary thing to share.
For me, Julie, it's more dependent on how soon our assistant can get out and do the first observation. And now we've been, kind of we're a little bit backlogged because she just cannot get out to see 40 people. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And if I happen to be at that school anyways, I will kind of start that process and just say, well, try this in the meantime if they've had, PECS training in the past or whatever, just to kind of get the ball rolling.
Nice. Anybody else? So just a few thoughts. I was just kind of making a few notes on the topic. There's process, and then there's, procedure, I guess. Does anybody want to talk a little bit about the different kinds of tools that you might be using? A set framework, the WADI documents. Is anybody using tools that they especially like or wish they knew something more about? Are we kind of still very much so in a situation with AT where we're very much dependent on our own kind of devices for collecting data and driving decisions with data, or has anybody found more standardized tools that they're adapting or out there and available? The written productivity profile, the PAR tools. Does anybody use any of that?
I know for us, Chris, I think those tools are wonderful, but it comes down to the time. I'm the only person doing the AT for reading and writing and access in a district of over 50 schools. So therefore, I love those tools because I'm a very detail-oriented person and I really like rules and I like having something that would document that whole process. But the thought of trying to do that is honestly overwhelming. I don't feel like I would meet the needs of many students. I think that's the right way to do it, honestly. But in reality, you know, I just don't see it happening. I don't know if anybody else feels that way.
Other thoughts, opinions?
Cherry Creek, I'm on the speech side of things, and I feel like we are definitely more on the AAC route. We're definitely creating our own data sheets, and that's what's kind of leading our decisions. But on the reading and writing side, I know that we're doing like the DeCoste protocol. I know that we are, as a district, we have a district license for UPAR, which is then driving our decisions using human readers versus technology readers, or I'm sorry, digitized readers. And so I can't do it justice like one of my other team members would, but I know that we are using some pretty high level kind of data kind of collection stuff to kind of really lead our reading and writing interventions right now. So we're doing things a little bit differently, but it's pretty cool the amount of data that we're getting from those resources.
Yeah, they're wonderful, wonderful tools, but when you need to get through something relatively comprehensive that touches on a lot of different areas, I concur with Michelle. Sometimes these things end up being so time consuming that it's hard to get through it all, I'm sure. Anybody else using the UPAR? How long is it taking to get through a UPAR? Just out of curiosity. We haven't used it yet. Really? Anybody? Any other tools that you're liking? What about reports? It sounds like a fair number of people have really moved more towards a consultative note versus a comprehensive report. What about outcomes? Is anybody taking kind of pre and post data on technology intervention? Is anybody looking 6 months post and taking pre and post data?
I have big dreams of doing that.
Perfect world. Yeah, and again, it always comes back to kind of these resources. We all have that ideal. We all kind of know what probably oughta, should happen, but
and I do feel that the school team, I do feel that that is their responsibility to look at, is the technology working for the student, and as more of that consultant role. If it's not, then we need to look at something else, and I think that that's where we come in. Again, in a perfect world, it would be great to do all of those follow-ups. And I think for our students that have more significant needs, we can do that. But just for our students that are using word prediction and those kinds of things, it would be almost impossible, to be honest, to do something like that. Yeah. I have dreams, though.
Now, the co-writer that you're using, is it Co-Writer Universal? Are you able to collect some back-end data on the students that are using?
Here in Adams 12? We actually are, we are moving to Read and Write for Google. Here in Adams 12, we have been using Co-Writer, and it will provide data on whether or not the student is actually using the product. I did not have a lot of teachers that actually went in and looked at the data. We are in the process of transitioning to Read and Write for Google. So our Co-Writer license expires in December, and we will not be renewing. So we're in a little bit of a transition period. And Read and Write does not offer that data. So.
Right. All right. How about Maybe speech recognition. That's a really popular tool as well. Do folks have thoughts or general practices on evaluating students for the use of speech recognition?
I'll jump in on that. What I've seen is fourth grade and up are usually the grades that can start to use speech to text. I always have a rule of thumb: if they can read it and edit their work, then they probably are ready for speech to text. One thing though I wanted to add, and when you're talking about data for co-writer, word prediction, or speech to text, because we're such a big district, and just in general from year to year, students using these technologies for the next general ed teacher or the next level up, be it middle school or high school, I started a Google Doc on that I have the student fill out with myself or with their primary learning specialist, and it's related to what technologies they're using. Are they comfortable opening up a Google Doc? Can they, access their Gmail independently? And just like a step-by-step form for those type of things where and then we share it with their new teacher, and so that there is some follow through with being able to use it again the following year.
Oh, that's nice.
I thought that's been helpful.
That's a great idea, because we do find that it drops off.
Mm-hmm.
That it doesn't always continue the next year.
Yeah.
So
that's a great idea.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share that, the format with you all. I
That'd
could
be
send it
great.
to Chris. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, well, when you wake up, when you go, I happen to be transitioning, helping a new SWAAC person at a middle school, and I just happened to follow up with one of the little guys I worked with in elementary who just moved up there, and little boy with Down syndrome who's using co-writer beautifully, and I worked with the EA, and she said, I said, oh, by the way, so-and-so uses this. And she said, oh, that's why he asked, where's the numbers?
Oh.
Because he was using the number keys and she didn't know. And teaching him to turn it on and off, gosh, I should have thought to do that.
Well, if you want to send that to me, Julie,
yeah.
If any of you have had a chance to see the new SWAAC website, but there is an announcements tile on the homepage, and so maybe I can try and get it posted up there.
Okay, I'll send you a link. Yeah. Okay.
Other thoughts? Questions to pose to the collective? Struggles, challenges?
No, I just I'm kind of more into experimenting. I guess students that are on the autism spectrum and they have some literacy skills and really using writing to help with their communication, just finding that really fascinating, when they can start to put together sentences by using either word cards or typing. It just really is amazing to see how much their communication can start to take off after that. So I've been kind of experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had an adult client once who frustrated me terribly because I never felt like he was terribly interested even in interacting. He was quite literate.
Yeah.
Using text to communicate. And what would happen is when he was in the zone or felt like it, he would sit down to a computer and he could pound out almost prose, and it would reflect experiences and interactions that he had had, for like the past week even, and comments on his, what he thought about those things. But they would only come out, a couple times a week. And so
wow.
the family was always, like scouring the computer looking for the communications. They would only come out once in a while, but my goodness, when it did,
Yeah.
you have to go back and think, oh, what happened last week or over the last 3 days? And yeah.
Yeah. So I've been trying to encourage teams to use sentence starters.
There you go.
And then, fill in the blank.
Mhm.
Can they, if they have the skills to spell or at least decipher, then at least to get them going and
Get them going. Yeah.
And I think that's a good point. Like, you use the term kind of experiment, which doesn't sound very formal, but I think you're right. I think we forget to try different things with students because sometimes we feel like we need to do technology, so we forget the low tech.
Right.
Or we feel like we need to actually assess everything, where it's like, let's try like speech to text. Let's try it and see if it works for the student.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it just has to be that kind of, I hate to say simple, but just like, let's just try it and see.
Yeah.
Because every day that we don't try those things, we lose another day of their access to learning.
Right.
So I hate to get bogged down with, well, should we try this or should we not try? We kind of over discuss it sometimes, where it's like, let's just try it.
Mm-hmm. What I found too is that the motoric act of using a talker is too labor intensive compared to writing if they have those literacy skills.
Wow.
Yeah. So just go with that.
Nice. Yep.
Definitely easier for everybody.
Absolutely.
National trends and AT assessments and consult. So in advance of today's web conference, I did kind of start searching around for current research on AT assessment practices in schools and just in general. And I was just terribly disappointed that the only, decent research seemed to be more about people who were trying to use outcomes tools. So they would do an assessment, make recommendation, I guess go through some training, but then the assessment was that back end, going back in and looking to see whether or not it achieved the outcomes that they were after. And in all honesty, most of it was done in more of a rehab, independent, well, not independent living, but supported living, adult population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That answer the question. Do you guys get it? So we're not doing any research here out of assistive technology partners, at least not at the moment. Yeah. It's interesting to me that some of the old standby sorts of approaches to assessment are still, what everybody's doing. You think about that set framework, that still seems to hold a lot of water. So, but the idea of a UPAR, I just love that, kind of putting some standardization around it, even if it's not standardized, at least it's consistent in its application. Seems like we should have some new tools. All right, well, does anybody have anything else they just want to chat about a little bit? No. Assessment or otherwise?
Not that I'm aware of.
I think not the next web conference, but the web conference after that, we'll try to hone in a little bit more on OGCOM. I do think that there's some new products out there for AAC and assessment of AAC. There's more discussion, I think, happening in the research around AAC and assessment. So maybe we can dig a little deeper down that road in a couple weeks.
And I do know my teammate Maureen really likes the AAC Genie app on the iPad. So, I can't speak of it at all, but I know that they are really liking that. So
I've really taken to liking the communication matrix.
Okay.
I'm using that quite a bit. I'm liking that. There are a couple of them out there. And I find myself using the AAC profile a little more lately. And I had someone bring that test of aided symbol production test, talking about that a little bit more. So we'll dig a little deeper into AAC in October. And then or maybe it's November, because we have, everybody seemed to want that AT accommodations for the state assessments as early as possible. So we do have the October web conference, September 26th. Is that it?
Oh, shoot. That's September 26th?
I think so. Let me see here, and I will confirm for you. Yes.
Okay.
So September 26th, we'll be talking about accommodations for the state assessment.
Okay. I will not be able to attend that, but I am going to be able to attend the webinar here in our district with the state. So hopefully I'll get a lot of good information from that.
And is that with Melinda as well?
I believe so, yeah. It's what the district people see. So
great.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be talking about it again at the team coordinators meeting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if nobody has anything else that they want to bring to the table, we'll call it good for today.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, thanks everybody for participating and coming today.
Thanks.
All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.